holidays, everyone, and welcome to the MSP Business School latest podcast. Today, I'm joined by Tim McNeil and Rob Rogers, as always, and we're going to share some of our favorite clips from 2022. It was another great year, great lineup of guests. We appreciate everybody joining us, and we, of course, appreciate all of you listening as well. But this week, we're going to take a little time off from our regular recording schedule, and we're going to go in and really highlight some of the people that came on and really brought us some wisdom during the course of the year. So with that, I want to say first, hey, happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, Happy Hanukkah Christmas. And all that, guys. How you all doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Brian? I love the background.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. Hey, that's a lot of time went into that. I can see you, like, that's pretty cool looking.
There's a solid 8 minutes put into that.
It doesn't show, my friend. You're a natural. You're a savant.
I mean, in fairness, I spent a lot of time on my background.
I will say,
you're really in the holiday spirit.
Yeah.
I will say this year, part of what I'm trying to do is work into the holiday spirit. It really feels like the holidays snuck up on us this year.
It did.
And, as we're recording it, it's December 21st. And
my birthday.
Oh, yeah. Hey, happy birthday.
Big 5-0.
Yeah.
Big 5-0
today, Brian. Today you joined the 50 club?
I'm in the 50 club. That's right.
So officially, I mean, Tim's always been the kid on this show, but and Tim, now you really got bragging rights.
Yeah.
Or we got a question why you're hanging around with such old guys.
Yeah, he's down there in the 40s, loser.
Okay.
Yeah, when he's still here and we're gone, Rob, you won't be the loser there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but he'll have to do the podcast by himself.
Yeah, who's winning that battle?
Yeah, let's see how that goes, right? Yeah. But anyhow, no, I'm excited. I'm trying to get back into that holiday spirit, trying to get ready to go. Not feeling good about the shopping that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
But with that said, people aren't here to hear about us, right? I say this every week. They're here to hear from our guests, and really that's who we want to spotlight. We like to take time at the end of each year and really thank the listeners and thank the folks that contributed. And one of the ways we like to do that is really spotlight some of the guests that went above and beyond for us this year, not only bringing us content, but some of the promotion that they did and some of the help that they've done to make our broadcast better as well. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Rob, because I think you've got our first guest, right, Rob, that we want to speak about today?
Yeah. So, I took a lot of time with this, trying to figure out, what was really impactful for the show and for the listeners as well. And, Brian, I always love good culture and I love good stories. And for me, one of my two for this year is Jim Lippy at SAS Alerts. I just absolutely just loved his story, the coming up from the sales department, becoming the CEO of Thrive Networks, and then helping to, spearhead or shepherd the M&A acquisition from Staples. I just like the whole story. I think it's partly because you can see that quiet confidence in him, and he's also very humble, and he's in a class of his own, being able to do something like that, but have that humbleness. It was really impactful. I like that a lot.
And what's interesting to me is, as there's a few folks like him that we've had on the show this year, where they're ushering in kind of the next generation of monitoring that's required for the industry too. So when you look at an industry that's changing, it's interesting to see, SAS Alerts obviously being one of a couple players that are really going into the SaaS and SaaS monitoring game, and really looking at the fact that a lot of companies, especially in the SMB community, have gone fully cloud. It's also a necessary tool for the time. So, obviously with some of the wisdom and experience in the past, it kind of guides you into how to disrupt the future, right? So
yeah,
that was what I took away from that episode.
Well, I also think of a platform like that, because to your point, Brian, because so many people are in the cloud now, it's so easy for employees to just do a one-off SaaS platform here or there. All of a sudden, you've got a 50-person company, and you may have 50 rogue SaaS platforms that are touching your network, and it's just critical that you've got that on lockdown, and that you know where that information is coming and going from. And a company like like Jim Lippy's or others out there, or other equivalents, they really provide an essential value right now with all the cybersecurity attacks.
I will say to close up this part of it, towards the end of the podcast, I remember he gave a very insightful explanation on how this works as a sell-through product. It works with account managers, and he explained how it works with the hunters, right? The people going out for new logos out there. So I thought it was a pretty insightful podcast for us, and it hit both sides of the house as it relates to sales and driving new revenue for you. So I thought it was impactful.
Perfect. So with that, we're going to take you now to a clip from Jim.
Yeah, so let's think about some use cases. So someone gets phished, and now a bad actor has legitimate credentials to their 365 instance, right? So now they're logging in. Most MSPs, unless they're monitoring that, they don't know when a bad actor is actually logging in with legitimate credentials from somewhere they're not supposed to. Right. So we alert when that happens. One of the first things a bad actor will do is they'll set up, like, they'll change email forwarding rules. That's something else that obviously we monitor for. We monitor over 130 different events.
Right. I was going to say, you can see that bad actor just getting that little egress in. There's a lot of company data that's actually accessible. We think about email, but SharePoint files, OneDrive files, shared resources in that manner, especially now that, even the MSPs are living out of it with, most of their teams in Teams all day long, right?
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, once they get access to 365, they can pretty much go anywhere.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is, like, the SolarWinds breach, 365 had a lot to do with that SolarWinds breach, but Microsoft has done a really good job of whitewashing that. Guest user accounts. This is a runaway problem that we've found that no one is talking about. So we've got approximately 120,000 guest users, 120,000 licensed users on our platform, meaning that you got a person, Rob, is associated with a 365 license, right?
Right.
Guess how many guest user accounts we have for those 120,000 users?
Oh no.
Is it a 3x number?
54,000.
So it's almost half. Now, it's funny, when you talk about that, I walked into a few clients that only had 6 employees, and then they would have almost 3x the guests, over the years, because they would really just be capturing their accountants, anybody that they needed to give some external access to inside of there, and no idea, that guy's still in there.
Right, exactly. Someone they needed to give access to for a week or two, and they just never got rid of it, or someone they need to give Teams access to. They create resources like a conference room, right? Here's the problem with those accounts. No one puts MFA on them because they're not tied to a quote unquote user, right? And on top of that, you can log into them, right? So it's a bad combination. You have an account that can be logged into, but no MFA. And there's a lot of these accounts out there.
Hey, that was a fun clip from Jim. And now we're on to our next guest. Tim, who do you have for us?
Yeah, so my first one that I want to bring up is Kipp from ConnectWise. He's one of the higher ups at Evolve, and it's somebody that Rob and I have known for a long time. We've really gotten to know him quite well over the last, since
2014.
Even since we started the company.
Yeah.
And because he's involved with Evolve, obviously those are the peer groups within ConnectWise. We're just talking about the importance of the exit. When a lot of MSPs, they join a peer group because they don't really know how to exit, right? And an effective peer group will not only help you grow operationally, but it will help you with that exit. And he made a great point early on that just kind of stuck with me. And it was something to the effect of, everybody has an exit, whether it's accidental or intentional. And the reason that they're around is to make that intentional. And I just, that was one that just stuck with me.
Yep.
It's good.
What I enjoyed from this one was Kipp comes from a little different walk of life than a lot of our guests do.
Yeah.
He's not coming from a sales or marketing position within an MSP. He's not coming from a channel position necessarily within it. He had a finance background, really got into project management, and then over into Evolve. So it was interesting to get the perspective of somebody who hadn't walk the walk of many of our guests to get to where they are today, but still could recognize the same problems, right, within the MSP community, or same, I shouldn't call them problems, but needs for support within the MSP community.
Yeah,
agreed.
The thing that I liked about Kipp in the episode was he just didn't focus, and he doesn't allow his peer groups just to focus on the business aspect, right? You know, one of the main drivers of the business aspect is his lifestyle programs and his making a difference personality scores. Like those things really are important, right? Because we kind of push those off to the side as business leaders and owners, and to make sure the business is growing, but making sure to keep that life work balance is important. And I like that about what he's building over there.
Agreed.
So with that, let's listen to Kipp.
Yeah, and so it's funny you say that. So we've got a business coach, right? And I think we hit some of the buzzwords that are very popular within the MSP community. We're in a peer group. We've got a business coach, and one of the things that Rob and I have learned over the years is, look, everybody's got an exit, whether they want it or not. So you might as well be prepared for it, right? So I think one thing that I just know, going back from the HTG days and going into now the Evolve days, I think you all are above average with helping companies with that exit strategy. So I don't know if there's any more that you can go into that on how you help companies, because that's a huge topic conversation that Rob and I have, and Brian too, with a lot of MSPs.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. What we kind of point out when we have this jumpstart program, and that's how we kind of introduce people into Evolve and the culture and everything else. And Tim, to your point, we say there's two ways to leave a legacy: accidental or intentional. Which one do you want to be, right? There's going to be one either way. Are you going to plan for it, or is it going to be accidental? That kind of goes through there. So, Evolve, when you look at, there's multiple different Evolve programs, but the flagship, the owner's program, is really built around 4 plans, right? It's your personal and business legacy plan, right? It's your business plan, which you have as your strategy, and then it's your life plan as well, right? So your life plan, you look at that as like, what's your 1-year goals? What are you looking for you? It's kind of that short-term 1-year goal. And then your personal legacy is with the end in mind, and the thing that we see now, it's like when you have someone who's, 5-10 years from their exit, it's easy for them to picture that. But we have a lot of young owners who are like, I'm trying to figure out when I want to build a family, or when I want to buy my next home, or where am I going to locate? And it's hard for them to vision that end in mind. So it's made, and that might be a 5 to 10 year outlook, rather than, you don't want to think of the morbid, oh, what happens when I die? But we all have those personal stories, that heart attacks, personal accidents, right? And now is the time to plan as far as what goes through there, so that your family's set up correctly. We have Evolve stories where, the husband didn't have the assets in the wife's name, and she lost the company, because it wasn't the right planning of what goes through there. So, but then you have the business side of it as well, right? And the business side of it is the same thing. It's, there's this new thing that Evolve's kind of pushing out there in this language or framework that they're looking to do, and it's called the modes theory. And it's what business mode are you in? Are you startup mode, right? Are you a value builder, where you're just trying to build value into your company? Or are you a balance builder, right? When you're a balance builder, you're going to say, hey, I got 20 companies. I'm making what I need to make. I'm not looking to grow this thing. I want to be able to take vacations. I want to be able to pay my employees well. And I just want those 20 A-list clients and sit there.
So that was a great clip. And now it's to one of my favorite guests that we had this year. And
I think I know who it is.
Everybody's chuckling because everybody's gotten to spend a little time with this gentleman this year at a couple shows and things like that. And it is Derek Gabriel from Ignite Solutions. Derek is one of my favorite people in the channel, because he's him. And that's really the best way to say it.
No way around it.
Derek's gonna Derek.
He's a what you see is what you're gonna get guy. This podcast was less about things that are probably going to help the industry and more about the accidental entrepreneur and the journey. And Derek had a killer journey. It's not many people that find themselves out in Hawaii from the Midwest, right? And,
is it Oklahoma? Is that where
we're gonna have to look that one up.
Or Iowa? It was like
it was something like that.
It was from Fargo to Bismarck to Kansas
That's
Hawaii,
right.
right?
Yeah.
You basically hit every cold, flat state on the way to going to beautiful, the world of beauty, right? And this is a great podcast a great episode because you'll just listen to a journey. And one of my favorite lines in it, and this will be the clip that we share with you, was when he basically said, I moved from having a job I was overqualified to wanting to find a job with the least amount of responsibility possible.
Yeah.
So I decided to become an MSP.
Yeah.
Now I think all of us can laugh at that because if there was a job we wanted little responsibility, that ain't it.
That ain't it.
Well, there are other avenues.
So with that said, let me share that clip now. And again, I thank Derek for joining us because that's one of the most fun episodes we did this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Agreed.
Dumbass.
And I started looking for jobs and I was getting rejected because I was overqualified. Cox Communications was rolling out cable internet and I applied to be an installer. I just thought, oh, this will be fun. And they're like, no, you're going to quit and go to Kansas City in like 6 months. We don't want you. And I was like, no, this is, and at one point I was working with a headhunter. I got paid like $50 to go to interviews in Kansas City. So I drive 2 hours to Kansas City. I interviewed at Sprint at one point, and it was it just sounded so horrible, such a horrible job. It was a database administrator for reporting, and you basically ran SQL queries all day so they could generate reports for the executives. And I was like, stab me in the eye.
Yeah.
I don't want that job, but I'll take it. And I met the guy at the part. Thanks for the $50. So it was really interesting. Yeah. So that's why I ended up with wanting a job with the least amount of responsibility, because I was pretty much over it. Yeah. And I went from Ford. I was a Ford dealer, and then I ended up I thought, hey, a better brand, it'll be a better experience. So I jumped to a Mercedes dealership, and what I didn't understand is that most car dealerships are owned by individuals, like, they're franchises essentially, right? And so the folks that owned the Mercedes, they're never going to watch this. Screw them. They were horrible people. It was a family from Chicago. It was a junior running it, and he just was not a nice person to work for. And I lasted, I don't know, 3-4 weeks. Just barely to the end of my probationary period. I think it was maybe 3 months. But there was days where we had to wear a suit and tie. Well, not a suit, but shirt and tie and dress clothes, right? And things would happen like the kids that wash the car, because every car has got to get washed, right? Oh, you came in for oil change, let me wash your car. And so we'd have to go up, be 3 p.m. on October, super hot in Honolulu. It's already 100% humidity, like a dog's breathing in your face. And now then you got with your tie, so you got to tuck your tie into your shirt so it doesn't get dirty, and then you got to wash a car. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? And so I went into my assistant manager one day and I said, you know what? I'm done. I just mentally I'm done. And I said, I'm going to give you my 2 weeks notice. And he was like, well, if you want to quit, just leave now. Like, give me your keys and your cell phone. And I packed up the proverbial box. And I'm walking down Kalakaua Avenue in beautiful Honolulu. It's November and the wind, there's a light breeze. My tie is slapping me in the face. I'm standing at the intersection waiting for the light to change. And I think, I'm going to call my friend in Kansas City. And I had a friend in Kansas City that had started, back when it was application service provider. And so I assumed he would have some software development work for me. I'd done, a lot of software. And so I called him up and said, hey man, tell your clients you have a branch office in Honolulu and send me some work. And we came up with this cool title, Pacific Director. And somewhere I've actually got business cards. It's hilarious. But with like days, first calls like, hey, can you fix a printer? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's figure it out.
Always great to hear from Derek.
Yeah.
But now we're going to move into our next guest. And this is a story that is kind of inspirational. So, it's another look at a journey, but a journey with a different approach model. So with that, I think this belongs to you, correct, Rob?
Yeah, this one's to me. And to me, as an instructive episode for our clients, this one for me was my favorite episode. It was about Vince over at Anchor Network Solutions. And he had so many insightful things. Look, the guy owns a $6.3 million MSP. He's a facilitator for peer groups. He's a subject matter expert with Autotask Datto. He's a really good guy, and he's always out there giving knowledge for free. And it was good to hear from him. But what I really liked about the episode was a couple of things. One, he came from the hospitality industry. He had no,
Yeah, he had
he,
nothing.
he had nothing. He worked at
Yeah.
Marriott, right?
Yeah.
You know, but one of the things that I said, and Brian, I think you remember this, working in the hospitality industry should be mandatory, right? It's a very powerful thing to understand empathy and understand service to other people. And I think that is one of the real drivers for his growth. He's not the best salesperson in the world. He's not like one of those top 1% salespeople, but his empathy and his experience in hospitality really helped him drive. And that's one of his secrets, is that client success services. So that was what was really powerful to me, and to be able to show people how he actually told people how to get past that $2.5 million ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think any business owner tends to have an ego attached to him. Vince breaks that mold.
Yeah.
He is an extremely unique person from the standpoint that he oftentimes in an interview, and this part I don't remember if he had mentioned it in the podcast or not, but I've had conversations with him where oftentimes when he's in an interview, he doesn't even refer to himself as the owner. He just refers to himself as the business development manager.
Mm-hmm.
And that alone, he's the poster child for putting the company first, right? It's about everybody else. And because it's about everybody else, he's been able to build a very successful company.
Yeah.
In service of others, right? And that really starts back to the original point Rob said about, being in hospitality, right? You've got to learn empathy. You've got to learn the ability to have patience, and you've got to really work on that mindset of what can we do to make the experience better.
I think the last, and this is the clip that I want people to, focus on, is don't be afraid of taking a C-level client as you're trying to grow. Don't get concerned with top grading clients when you're just trying to make ends meet and trying to build up your nucleus. You worry about that kind of stuff, like the pumpkin plan and top grading clients. That's later on down the road. In fact, he didn't even start doing it until he was above $4 million. And so it's a very powerful thing to hear from people. And we've been working with Vince for, Tim, 6 years now.
Oh, yeah, at least 5.
At least 5.
Yeah.
And just watching his evolution based on hospitality and empathy, it was powerful.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, let's get to the clip.
That's what's propelled us forward, is adding security services and cloud, of course.
So Vince, when you say client assessment, do you mean client grading, like a top grading assessment, or do you mean net detective and that kind of stuff? Like what are you talking about?
I mean the Mike Michalowicz pumpkin plan.
Pumpkin plan.
Writing. I was supposed to in 2020, I was supposed to do a session on, I knew you guys were doing ASCII stuff for ASCII on client assessment chart and a client advisory board. And then I got sick with COVID and couldn't do any of the sessions. But we have an actual client assessment chart where they get a grade letter. It's based on a numerical formula, but it and revenue is the least important. It is, do we cringe when you call? Do you give slip ups? Do you engage with us? Do you pay on time? Do you take our advice? And so we rank clients that way, and it kind of gives us a target of, do they get it? That's even actually very straightforward criteria. Do they get it? If they don't get it, then they're not going to last here very long. So yeah, we evaluate all clients that way.
So you're basically taking the pumpkin plans, client grading system is like verbatim. Is that what
Not
you
verbatim.
do? Okay.
No, we made it our own.
Making it to make your own.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just the concept that he had.
The concept.
Right.
I will say I really like the pumpkin plan, and that, because we've seen that as well, and we like that thing as well. We made it our own too, but boy, is that thing a good empirical system to like really help you understand and take the the gray area out of it. We like it as well.
Oh, we included it in sales maturity.
Yep.
Yeah. I especially like the idea of not putting a huge focus on the revenue standpoint. I think too many people do, right? They focus so much on how much revenue is coming in per client. Really, you should be seeing, are they the right fit for you?
Do they give referrals? Right. Yeah, all the stuff.
Do you embrace IT and execute? Do they meet your tech standards? I mean, there's so many different criteria you can look at that go beyond just pure revenue. And, I always look at those plans as also when you start getting to the size where you're at, it's making sure you're not overlooking those customers in the middle of your stack that are ready to be risen up as well. You put that security stack out. Who are those customers I can maybe just make a phone call to and not even have to quote to get it added to the contract versus the ones that I'm going to have to go through a full-on sales process.
Yeah, I mean, we don't, and our client success team, we're very clear with our customers that they're not there to sell you anything. They're there to, help you build a business roadmap or a technology roadmap that aligns with the goals of the business.
Hey, so while Rob wants you to think that last clip was the most important, I think Tim's going to tell you he feels a little bit differently right now. So, I think we know who your next guest is, but why don't you let us know, Tim?
Yeah. So one of the ones that I picked was Rob Rae, and admittedly, it's early on from 2022 when this was recorded, and it's somebody that Rob and I got to know, Rob Rogers, and I got to know quite well in 2021, just going to all the ASCII events. And about two-thirds of the way through the podcast, the conversation transitioned to co-managed and just the huge opportunity that there is right now for MSPs. And it's funny, he actually made the comment, because even going back to when Rob and I were in the industry way back when, there was almost this negative connotation about working in a co-managed partnership. And I never really understood why. And even Rob kind of admitted that he was one of the ones that recommended not doing it. And now he understands that it maybe wasn't the right thing. So it was just it was kind of funny how it's progressed over the last 10 years and how co-managed is truly, not only is it a thing, it should be a part of any MSP, I believe.
I'd agree with that. And it's such an interesting story, because while Rob may have been against the co-managed thing back then, I think almost all of us were, because it was all about getting full control of the customer.
Yes.
And now as technology's evolved and break fixes left us and cloud has come into vogue, it's almost like you're forced into co-manage anyway. And those who realize how to harness the power of it will reap the riches, as they say.
Yeah, very true.
Absolutely.
Very true.
So with that, let's dive in and hear a man that many of you know.
Understand why. I can understand why. And if there's anything that's probably the most exciting out of all of this, it's probably this part of it. And I think you can easily predict that at some point in time, any organization, anywhere, regardless of size, it just doesn't make sense to have in-house IT people. Like it just doesn't at a certain point. Maybe to protect like internal infrastructure, but as far as anything that's coming outside, things are moving too quickly. Technology is too complicated to have somebody in-house doing these things. And co-managed IT, to be honest, if you talk to a lot of MSPs, they've been doing it for a while. They've been working and that, have some level of project work with larger organizations. But when you look at the mass job shortage that we've got, especially in the IT space, when you look at the whole concept of outsourcing is cheaper than in-house, when you look at the technologies complicated, data migration, cloud technology, even cybersecurity, like these are things that you cannot just take a course once a year and be up to speed on what's going on in IT. These are the things that you need to be constantly on top of. And again, prime for MSPs. The fear, Brian, going back to where you're talking about, and the hesitation comes from the idea that we've all been trained and we've spent 2 decades training ourselves on complete outsource. Go into a shop and here's why you want to outsource your IT to me. Now, all of a sudden, you're going into a shop and instead of complete outsource, you're saying to the IT guy, which historically you have replaced, you're now having a conversation with the IT guy to go, I can help you. I can make you look good. I can make sure that, these things happen, and stay in place and all that. So it's a different sale. And I think that's where people get a little bit gun shy. The messaging is a little bit different. The language is a little bit different, but there is massive opportunity there for the channel. And I'll tell you, I'll go back to these large vendors that are out there providing IT services. Their biggest fear is the MSP channel coming up market, because they haven't developed a relationship with the MSP channel to the point where the MSP will sell their stuff, which means if the MSPs get into the mid-market and large market, these technology companies will get shut out. So even they are now starting to think, how do we train people properly so that we can bring an MSP into these markets? That's more money, more time, more energy that's going into training MSPs to be better. From an MSP perspective, why do you want to go up market? When you go up market, you have organizations that take their technology seriously and they pay their bills on time. Who doesn't want that? You know, who doesn't want more money and on time money? You know, then you're not dealing with a lot of the nagging issues that we have in the SMB space.
Yeah.
It's always fun to hear Rob Rae, isn't it, guys?
Yeah.
But with
Yep.
that said, I see Timmy decided to update his window, bring a little
Mhm.
Christmas holiday cheer.
What are you doing?
Tim, what do you got going on there?
Oh, man.
We've got Rob twice.
All right. So I photobombed you.
We need a little Rob Rogers everywhere today on the Big 5-0, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mess with the big 5-0 guy. Got it.
it's
All
all
right.
about Rob today. But now we're going to move into our next clip. And I chose for this one, Cotman Technologies, specifically John Cotman and Luke Ross joined us on the podcast. And one of the reasons I wanted to refresh our viewers of their story is because they're dealing as an MSP working in non-traditional markets. Located up in, outside of the Fresno area of California, they're doing a lot of agricultural. So they're working with groups that have farms, are processing almonds, if I remember correctly, and just things that are outside what most MSPs are going after, and the industries most MSPs are going after, but certainly having a great time doing it. And one of the other reasons I pick these guys is I always love a story of somebody that started, knew what they were going to do, and made the journey early. And John let us know, he started this right out of high school. And, to be that certain on what you want to do and then carry it forward and grow it from that stage, it always amazes me because I had no clue what I was doing out of high school. Pretty safe to say I didn't know what I was doing out of college.
I didn't know I'm still trying to figure it out.
High school. Nope.
Yep. Some people know what they want to be when they grow up very early, and I commend John on being one of those.
Yeah.
But as it relates to the clip we're going to show today, it's really about culture, right? We love to talk culture with these different groups that we work with, and understand how they keep people engaged and operate. And what I loved, about what they shared is, culture starts with doing the right things, period, and being consistent and living, and acting in character, even if you going out of character would be something that could solve a problem quicker, but staying consistent, I won't call it brand here because it's really about the person and the personality and their beliefs and feelings. But, John really did that. And, he really cemented it with me when he started talking about offboarding process and how the offboarding is as important as onboarding. And, to feel that way at a time when you're losing the revenue associated with that customer and they might be going somewhere else, but to do it with the same level of care that you treated the whole relationship and doing it without any grudge or malice kind of thing. It just, it's refreshing to see in the industry.
Yeah. You do not see that much. I mean, I'm sure any MSP that's listening right now, they either have had a negative experience when trying to bring on a new client, the former MSP won't give up the keys to the kingdom, or they've either experienced it or heard of it happening. And leaving graciously is almost as important as coming in graciously.
The thing that I liked about it is, it also, it's the right thing to do. Clearly it's the right thing to do, but it also sets up yourself for calling them up 6 months later and saying, hey, how's it going? Right. Kind of like circling back to that old client. And maybe it's not going well. And if you offboarded correctly, then, you have a chance of maybe getting that client back. And if you do it poorly, you've burnt the bridge. Right. So it was a very important and powerful thing.
You want to know what that goes back to?
The same thing.
The peak end theory.
The peak end theory.
Gotcha. Peak end
Maybe
theory.
next year we can do an episode on the peak end theory because I'm
intrigued.
But we don't have time for that right now. No, again, I think it'll be time to roll the clip. And
it was a good episode.
Inspiration as well on this.
No, I kind of wanted to just ask you, like for people who are out there and trying to understand if maybe they're in the same position that you guys were in. Do I get rid of this client? Do I not? Am I just, doctor doesn't always fire all of his patients that don't take his advice. Where is that line? Where was that line for you guys? Was it culture and just butting heads, or was it really just misaligned risk?
I think, probably really a bit of both. I think, as you're kind of evaluating that, put some lines in the sand. I think it's always like, when you're in that spot, it's like we gave 110% effort to say, because it's always better to try and change a relationship or make it kind of moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
But put some lines in the sand that say, what, if we don't get to X point by this date, based on us putting 110%, then we're going to really kind of go down that path and make sure, that they can transition well. I think too, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't too late, meaning that, we kind of saw that risk growing with them and their technology, but we didn't want to ever leave them in a spot where that risk was too great for them to find a partner that would take on that risk.
Okay.
We transitioned that client. We actually, we exported their IT glue documentation. I think it was 450 pages at the time, to that next partner. And it was actually kind of cool. We had somebody who applied to work for us during that process. And from that other provider, he said, really, it was because of the documentation he provided.
Wow.
We saw what you guys had done. And it was really, it's like, we always tell clients, like, their documentation, it's their property, not ours. So we always want to make sure that, it's like that next person, it's like, got to start where we left off. We never want a client to suffer or have to start over from scratch because of all the work that has already been done.
Sure. So you did it right.
Yeah.
That's very good.
One other thing, the owner of that company, I do think it came at a bit of a surprise to them, almost like, whoa, we're divert, this is not continuing, and for these reasons. And John kind of lays this out, and him and the owner had a great conversation. But the owner basically says, what's your number? Like, if this is financial, if we're not aligned and you're not winning, like, know that we're okay. And John held to basically like, no, it's not, it's actually not financial. People will talk about efficiency rates, all that. It's a true, like, cultural, for these reasons,
Wow.
this risk, here's why. And I thought that speaks volumes of John, his leadership and just the true conviction by us, just behind it. Like, no,
those were some fun clips. I really enjoy looking back at some of the customers that were, some of the MSPs, I should say, some of them being our customers that joined us on the show, and certainly the different faces within the channel. But we want to, throw out one special thank you as well to somebody who's become a regular contributor to the MSP Business School podcast. And that's our friend Abe Garver from over at Focus Investment Banking. Abe has been a supporter of our podcast since our infancy. He's great to the industry, passing knowledge, helping owners prepare for the big day that each one of you hopes to have. And, just his sharing go-giver attitude is amazing. So we want to close out this edition with a clip from Abe Garver. But before I do that, Tim and Rob, do you got some thoughts?
Yeah, I'll jump into this first.
Yeah.
So he's a subject matter expert, right? And like him going to the different peer groups to give people like this industry is like a sponge trying to gain knowledge on mergers and acquisitions. And he's not a hoarder, right? He's always going out and he's always trying to teach people on how to do that. And I love that give type of, philosophy. And so that's what I really appreciate.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I really like about Abe is not only his demeanor, but he's got one of the cooler stories, I think, since we started MSP Business School. And that's, back in the day, we used to do the 5 questions. And I think it was it Willis? Somebody was listening to our podcast, and based on how Abe answered the questions, that's why he decided to do business with Abe. And Abe actually, I don't know the exact situation, but he helped this M&A deal go through.
I forgot about this, but basically he answered a question, and I think the question was, if you could meet any one person or have dinner with somebody, if there was anybody you could have dinner with, he said, it'd be my son.
Yes.
And, he said, because family is important to me. And sometimes this job, I think, could take you away. And one of the listeners who was already engaged with Abe, across, evaluating different M&A advisors, chose him in that moment because he felt he understood the values, right?
Yeah.
And when Abe shared
Yeah.
that story, I remember Tim now.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
That was cool.
If I remember correctly, his son attended the closing dinner.
Yes,
as
he
a
did.
result of that as well.
And
So,
in fact,
it went full circle and true to form. And, those are the things that make Abe a genuine person in the industry, and why, we want to thank him for all the support that he's shown the show for the past, couple of years now, really dating back to the early days of COVID.
Yeah. I mean, how much have you seen those multiples jump since 2018, since you really started getting into the MSP side?
They've really come from, some of the initial platforms were still, even back at that time, I'd say 8x to 10x range, at
still
2.5. But now it is, it is definitely, there's so much competition. I had a merger of equal platform that's closing here shortly. Had let's see, I had 65 signed NDAs, so 65 live buyers competing for it, 10, call it 10 offers, and then just a couple people that we had invited to management meetings and more that wanted to come. So there's just intense, you have to create that competition, and that's part of my role. These valuations, absolutely just don't happen at an arm's length, kind of a buyer calling a seller, and they wind up at that multiple. It's all of those kind of trades I showed are, I think there's 17 auctions I've run at this point, and it's keeping, what's really important is in running the auction, like of those 10, I know how the 10 that bid, I got 9 runners up. So the next time I go run a platform, I know how they have behaved, and kind of, are they getting one of the platform transactions we closed a couple months ago, the winning bidder had lost for a period of 2 years on 3 different attempts. And I said to them as the 4th one started, I've seen this movie before with you, and I don't want to watch it again. And they, at that point, to win, like many of the bidders that are actually winning have had experience in processes and are figuring out what it takes to kind of like get the home.
Do you see the word auction is just not something, I mean, it makes sense to me. I just hadn't heard that before today. Is that something there, again, just more curiosity on my end? Is that something you saw back in 2018 all the way through here, or is it more consistent now, I guess is really my question.
Yes. And it actually, I was with a group of advisors, all meeting with MSPs, and they were from other firms, and it really forced me to kind of think about how are we different. And really three things, jump out at me. One, the advisor kind of is your, like, how to choose a MSP M&A advisor. The first question is, does the person spend 100% of their time focused on the MSP market, is one. 2, have they done, and this is a formula, 2 and 3 are a formula that get to 100. So question 2 is, have you done 10 transactions in the past year? If so, you can count the 10, and you're now in question 3 going to multiply by, question 3 is, can you show your prospective client how many inbound emails you get from MSP buyers during a month that want to make a platform? I think those 2 are really important. Like, are you out there running the auctions, and do you have the inbound kind of interest? And so for us, I've had 12 new buyers contact me in the past 15 days. So annualize that, I'm probably at a 200 on this scale, but you only need to get to 100.
Mhm.
There were advisors I was with, that this was their third MSP assignment. They just don't know how these buyers behave if they haven't done it 17 times in auctions in the past, kind of three years. So
Wow.
we've always run auctions.
Mhm.
But I would say an MSP founder CEO may hire someone who's less expensive than we are, who they get hired, they prepare the book, it all looks great, but they don't have a running list of all the buyers that are trying to get into the market. And so now they go out and the bids that they're going to get are sub, kind of
Yeah.
best in class.
So with that, guys, I think we're done for this episode.
I think
Yeah.
so, Brian. This is the final episode of 2022. It's been a fantastic year, fellas. A lot of ups and downs. And, Brian, you and I showed up to most of the episodes. Timmy showed up for a couple of them here or there, which was nice.
Part-time.
I think people should know the only reason I have to show up for every single one of them is I press record.
Yeah.
So you can't get rid of me. But guys,
it never could, Brian. You're irreplaceable, my friend.
Guys, great 2022. I want to thank all the listeners out there that are supporting us. I want to thank anybody watching us on YouTube. And of course, I want to thank you guys. It's always more fun to do these things with some other people. And, besides the guests, it's great having both of you each week. And, I wish you and your families and everybody listening out there a great holiday.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.